Welcome to Center for Social Change. We're here in Miami, but we're across the country with nonprofits impacting communities. It's absolutely amazing. My name is Daniel Puder, and I'm hosting this episode with Lorinda Gonzalez. She is the rock star that helps people bring in money, find grants. They build grants. They help people make impact within communities. So thank you for coming to the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Lorinda, I love being at Center for Social Change.
Yes. Isn't it an amazing space?
Can you tell me about this place? Because people really don't know. I mean, we have about, 80, 90 nonprofits here. But I'd love for people to get a viewpoint of what you think of what this center is about.
So the Center for Social Change is a really cool place because it's a co-working space where social entrepreneurs and nonprofits can actually collaborate and work together. So we're able to, all of us, have the collective idea that we want to improve, improve this community, have positive impact in the community. It's a place where we can actually all do that and work together in that space.
It's awesome here. My nonprofit is My Power. We've been here since 2018, and now it's amazing. So how did you get into the nonprofit world? How did you become an entrepreneur, and what are you up to?
So I started when I was about 21 years old. I was in business school at FAU, and I had the idea in that time planning to open up a business working in the healthcare field, and it didn't work out. I ended up going into nonprofits because I was working for marketing firms and doing editorial work because I'm a writer is what I was working in, and then grants came up as a topic, and I learned how to do it. I literally went one day to the library, checked out about 50 books on grants, and read through as much as I could, and then put up an ad, got my first gig, my client got their first grant, and that was it. I was hooked because I felt like what I was doing was able to have so much impact, and I love the work. I've been doing it since about 10 years now.
So you went to FAU, and I've been there. I love FAU.
Love it. Yes.
It's a gorgeous campus.
Yes.
More of a commuter school.
Yep.
So a lot of people are commuting in, but they got a great football team. They have great sports. They have great dynamics. Culture there is awesome. What did you enjoy most? Because I find there are a lot of people that are maybe listening to this. They want to. They're like, "Wow, I can be a grant writer."
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, wow, I want to learn how to do more grants." So let's start with the beginning of how'd you, you checked out 50 books.
Yeah.
What were you thinking about when you were going to college?
So when I was in college, I started originally as pre-med, and then I went to healthcare administration, and then I switched to English. So I was always, I had regular 9-to-5 jobs. I used to work in HR, but it was like I was missing something. I wanted to do something more creative, I had to find my niche. And I found that at FAU, the professors I had were amazing, and they would always communicate to me, you're going to find a niche. You're going to find something that's going to be different than what everybody else is doing, and that's what you need to run with. So I always kind of had that in my mind. And just the way FAU is, and it's such a cool campus, and the professors come from so many backgrounds, you get to learn so many different things. And for me, it's interesting because the field of grant writing is not a traditional track. You can't get a bachelor's in grant writing. It doesn't exist. But I just took all the education that I had and experiences I had between HR and working in the medical field and as a student, and kind of just put all that together. And then so I'm doing grants, and it's very similar, believe it or not, to college essays. So that's kind of the baseline is, you have to build an application just like you would build a college term paper. So that's where I kind of first started and grew into this.
So how did you pick FAU? Let's go back a little more. How did you pick FAU in the beginning?
So I lived in, my father worked for the federal government, and we used to travel a lot as a kid. So then when my parents split up when I was 14, we came to Florida, and I was in Vero Beach. Then I moved to Palm Beach County. So I started at Palm Beach State College, and then the easy transfer was FAU because as a commuter, since I don't drive, I was able to, use the train and the bus and all this stuff and get to FAU. And that was the reason I chose there. And it's an owls, which I love owls. It's our logo. And FAU was an owl, so I felt like that was a positive vibe, positive sign. And then, that's how I ended up there.
I love it.
Yeah.
So now you're based in Center for Social Change. Yes. Are you only based in South Florida?
Yes, primarily, although we have clients all over the United States and a couple international. So.
Interesting. So do other countries have grants the same as we do?
It's very different. It's actually very different. So in other countries, they're called NGOs. So instead of nonprofit organizations, so it's structured different. But what I find is there's a lot of nonprofits here in the U.S. that want to have an impact in other countries and vice versa. And so that's what creates that connection between the two.
So an NGO is as non-government organization?
Exactly. So they're typically funded by the government versus here, the private entities like private corporations or private foundations will provide funding. Over there, it's mostly just government.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the research and vetting a grant. What do you guys look for? Can you give a tip?
Sure, absolutely. So research is probably the most overlooked part of the grant writing process. People think that grant writing is just filling out an application and getting money. That's not the truth. The first thing you need to do is a research where you actually look to see which funders are providing funds that you're eligible for. So the first tip is you have to understand your programming and what it is that you're able to do as a nonprofit and how you're able to serve. Once you understand that, then you can start to research funders that are funding exactly what you're doing and then create that connection, and then that's what will lead to grant funds.
Okay, so that's the research and the vetting side. Do you find that people are like, hey, I want as much money as possible? When you're just starting out, should they start with smaller grants, bigger grants? What's your thought?
Traditionally, it's smaller, so you want to start with local first. So if you're serving your local community, you want to see what funders are also wanting to serve our local community. You start there with smaller funds, and then over time, you can use that to leverage additional funds. So you may start with a small grant, $5,000, $10,000, bring it up to 25, and then leverage those funds to start getting into the bigger pots. The bigger pots are more money and also more long-term grant funding. So typically programs are once a year, but you can get into 2-3-year grant programs if you leverage the smaller ones to get the big ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So grant strategies, when you look at the smaller locals to more the federal, national, bigger grants, what are the strategies that you start off with to help people?
So what I start off is looking at their funding plan, so to speak, and what their budget looks like. How has the cash flow been? Is it a positive upward cash flow? Is it downward? That's where we start. We really start at the financial level because you have to have some funds in your nonprofit or be fiscally sponsored in order for you to start applying to other grants. So what we do is we look to see what grants do you currently receive? What grants are you going after? Maybe there's due dates that have been missed or opportunities that have been missed, and kind of look at that full picture of what the funding history has looked like and where we can bring it to in the future. So, and then kind of plan out a strategy. And what I like to focus on is sustainability of an organization versus just a one-time grant. Because one-time grant is great, but when the money runs out, what do you do then? So we really focus on a year-long strategy to see what you can do, what activities you can integrate throughout the whole year to boost your income and then hopefully keep you around forever.
So you use the grants more of to build something out, test a program, to then be able to strategically put a sustainable platform of financial behind
Exactly, because that's the idea. Is a lot of nonprofits struggle with finances, just like any business. That's a very difficult, big part of a business. And we focus, like I said, on the sustainability. So the idea is to bring in funds from a diversified perspective. So part of it is grants, part of it is maybe fundraising or other activities they have going on. But how can grants complement that to help ensure that the nonprofit stays around for a long time?
So where are you guys best in understanding the strategy? Do you find, or let me rephrase that. Do you guys, when working with the CEO of a nonprofit or executive director team board, do you find that they're really receptive to what you're just saying? Because I believe it's the right way to go.
Yeah, sometimes no. What's interesting is that there's a more old-fashioned perspective on grant writing, and what that is that the best grant writer in the world is going to get you the grants because they have the connections, and that's not, in my perspective, completely accurate. There are tools and resources that should be, in my perspective, available to all nonprofits so they can educate themselves, learn how this works, and then achieve sustainability, because there's enough money to go around. It doesn't have to be cutthroat, and the idea of nonprofit is to help the community, so we should work together in collaboration. So I come in from that perspective. And also what I find too is that staff tends to be very overwhelmed with the activities because there hasn't been a lot of guidance or a lot of help as far as who's doing the grant writing, because nobody really wants to do it. So I'll go in and talk to directors and say, okay, what's going on with your staff? What are they experiencing? How can we help? And then we try to systemize things.
I like that. How much time do you spend with, let's say you work with a company, how much time do you spend with them on building out the grants and the strategy side of it, or the writing the grants compared to strategizing with them? So
strategizing, believe it or not, the strategizing and the research is probably 80% of the job, and 20% goes into the actual grant writing, which is something a lot of people are very surprised at. They think it's just the writing of the grant. And I can write a proposal, we can draft a proposal and submit it, but we need to really make sure that what's in the proposal is clear, that it represents what the organization is doing, it's going to have a positive impact in order to create that sustainability over time. So most of the time is spent on that.
Do you find a lot of grants, because I've seen them that are like 1, 2, 3 years. We just got a grant from a major funder in South Florida that was up to 5.
Wow.
So I like that 5-year consistency.
Yes.
And it can get renewed after 5 years because we'll have so many kids going through it, pre and post data, all that. But do you find, I've seen like a 2 or 3 year grant once in Miami, I forget what it was, but somebody got it. They got an after school program going after, let's say, 2 years, and it was running. The first year was kind of like getting it up and going. Second year was running.
Right.
Then the grant got given to somebody else. And
it does happen.
So it's crazy to be able to see how this grant process, I believe, is flawed a lot. What's your thought on that?
I think you're absolutely right. It is flawed because it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? It's a difficult process, and a lot of people think that you get the grant funds and then that's what's going to funnel you forever, but not really. It's something that unfortunately you have to consistently work on. So you can get maybe a 2-year grant, a 3-year grant, a 5-year grant if you're lucky, but eventually the funds do run out. So you have to always have a plan in place of when this fund runs out, the next one will come in. And I find also what's difficult is that it's hard to find out which grants are you eligible for, because there's not one primary resource tool that you can go to, look up the information, and boom, these are the ones I go for. Not really. You can find the foundations, you can find the funders, but to get from the step of who are my funders to which grants am I actually eligible for and can apply to, there's a lot of gap, which makes it very confusing and difficult for nonprofits.
So I look at like GuideStar and other platforms that have amazing content on there. Do you think that's a big need to have a central hub system long term that every foundation can have their platform on, they can take applications on, and it's super simple, like a pre-app where it's like, here's so that foundations can really get the facts as fast as possible about what they're doing, maybe a video of like, this is what we do. Yes,
I think so. I think that foundations should, for the benefit of the nonprofit and the benefit of the whole, should have their information more easily accessible. There are some that do a really great job, like you have like the Miami Foundation, or you have the Children's Trust. They have programs available to educate people on how the process works. I know the Children's Trust does workshops, so you can learn what their process is. That's great, but that's so few that do that. So it becomes very difficult for nonprofits. And the thing is that there's so much time and energy and money that goes into applying to grants, and the ultimate goal is to receive funds, right? So you're spending so much in getting this done, and there's so much confusion. If there was a clear route, one website, like you mentioned, one resource, and everybody kind of just went through the process, I think it'd be better on both sides, for the funders and for the nonprofits.
I agree. Let me ask you, grant management. I find that with one of the grants we have, there's just a laundry list of stuff, and I find that it's easier for our nonprofit to get a contract per se from a nonprofit or for-profit where it's either contract for, let's say, training or from the state with our school system. We accept a kid, we get it funded by a scholarship / voucher, and we get paid, we do what we're supposed to, and really improve that kid's life. So I like those preferably for me. But the grant we do have, it's 5 years, for up to 5 years. And I love that concept too, because 5 years I can really show a model that works. What's your thought on that? So
I agree. There's a lot when it comes to the reporting side of things. Like, I can see what you're saying. Both is good. Like a 5-year grant is great because you have consistent funding. But to keep that grant, there's a lot of reporting that goes into it. And I think sometimes nonprofits don't know what that entails, that management side of the grant. And I always try to educate clients and say, hey, we can go because they want to go after this big money. Let's do it. But here's the thing. After you get that money, there's a lot of steps involved. There's quarterly reporting. There's invoices that have to be submitted. If it's a federal system, there's a federal payee system that has to be, processed. And that sometimes can take staff of its own. So you have to really balance out and evaluate your own time and commitment to it and decide whether or not it's a good fit. And you can only hire staff if they have funding within the staff section. Yes, exactly. Because that does happen. Sometimes, you get the grant and it does not allow for the staff or a lot for the staff to manage that grant. So you have to now pull from somewhere else. What's great is I think that, and I like this, what I'm seeing, for instance, with one foundation I know, Dr. Oz, I don't know if you know who he is. Yes. So I was just on his TV show and filmed a couple episodes, and Health Corps is his foundation. Amazing what they do. I went and visited a site, and one of their biggest things is they want to impact more kids in more schools. And it's the funding side of it, which I'd love to connect you with them. Yeah, absolutely. And so we're talking about, I said, why don't I attach your name to one of our schools
a Dr. Oz by Health Corps, you know, MLMPI Preparatory Academy, one of our schools, I'll build you in. So it's a for-profit, non-profit model.
Got you.
And I'm finding like Tom's Shoes or other brands that have done this kind of thing before, they build in the model where you buy something, we give something. You buy something, we donate. And it's interesting to be able to see that concept even growing to the next level. And I think it will be that long term because foundations can't get the real result if they're spending 50, 60, 70% of their time and resources on fundraising.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a great opportunity because, you know, the goal here is social impact, is to create change in our community. I think that's why nonprofits exist. That's why we're all in this field. And, you know, if for-profit companies continue to do that, I mean, we can make so much more impact. You know what I'm saying? Like Tom's, like you mentioned, they're donating shoes. I mean, that's a huge impact for maybe kids that need that. So I think it's a way that we can all collaborate together, for-profit and the nonprofit side, to really solve these social issues and really make an impact.
So why all of this? Like, I understand, like, you know, you moved around when you were a kid. You could do anything. You could write articles. You could become the editor of the Miami Herald. You could, you know, and you might want to do all that stuff. But why are you spending so much time? I know it's a passion of yours, but why? Like, have you really seen the change that you're actually creating?
I have. And believe it or not, it's not in the dollars. It's not the amount of money. I can't say the biggest grants have been the most impactful. No, some of the smaller grants have, because I feel like, you know, I really wanted to make an impact in the world. I wanted to do my part, you know what I'm saying? And when I had gone to, actually I had gone to Hawaii in 2015, I believe it was. And when I went there, I had just a very spiritual experience. I kind of just saw the world different. I think anybody who goes to Hawaii does. And when I came back, I'm like, you know what? I have an opportunity to use my unique skill set from my background, which is different than others. And, you know, I'm kind of fast on the computer and I'm kind of analytical. And I'm like, why don't I use this to help nonprofits? And it feels good. You know, when I get that email or that phone call, hey, we got the grant. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And then I try to really network with the organizations I work with and see their programs. So I get to see that impact. And it makes me feel like, you know, I'm doing something for the greater good. And that, I sleep well at night doing that. I just want to keep doing it. Yeah.
So tell me, like, you know, a lot of people have a dream. They go, I want to run a company. I want to be a CEO. I want to build a team. I want to, you know, I always talk to students or adults when I do trainings. And I say, number one, you have to have the skill set to get there.
Yes.
And it's a growth mindset, high emotional intelligence, you know, vision, purpose. Then the second set is, if you want to build a big company, you have to be able to take people and build them into it. Which now you have to do what you did for your life for other people.
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't have the first step. Like, they get there because they maybe did well, you know, for sales, or they have a couple relationships, but they really don't grow themselves. How have you seen your own personal growth, or how did you figure out how to grow? Because you're an amazing human.
Oh, thank you. So for me, it's interesting. When I first started doing this, I did it with a little rolly table in my mom's house in my bedroom. And now I have, you know, an office space, and I have clients all over the United States and all that. And for me, it was like spiritually, I practiced yoga and meditation and things like that. And that kind of helped me focus. And because I always knew that I wanted to have a very independent lifestyle, especially as a person with a disability. You know, I face challenges that are a little different than others, but that was never a hindrance for me. So I knew that I wanted to have a career where I was making an impact in this community, but also worked for me. And with this job, it's flexible. As long as I have my laptop, Wi-Fi, and my cell phone, I can work anywhere and actually help people. So that was kind of, I think, what drove me into entrepreneurship, because it was a better fit for me, for my personal lifestyle. Because that way, if I need extra time to get dressed in the morning or whatever, it's fine. I just have meetings later on in the day. Like, you just work with the ebb and flow of it. And that has helped me. You know, I travel a lot. I go a bunch of different places. I met a lot of people everywhere, and for me, it's great. It's a great lifestyle.
Why South Florida?
Why South Florida? So I like the weather. I mean, we moved down to Florida because of my grandparents. When my parents split up, we moved down here because my grandparents lived in Vero Beach area. And then slowly I just moved down farther south, and I really like it here. I like the weather. The sun is great. My sister's in Missouri right now, and she's freezing. So I'm like, you know, I think I'm glad I'm here.
Here. Yeah, and I agree. That's why I'm here too. When I saw the beaches the first time, I'm like, what?
It's amazing.
Because my parents, they took me to Hawaii when I was a kid, but that's a huge flight.
It's a huge flight.
I was in California.
Oh, okay,
I grew up in California.
Okay.
But it's still a 5-6 hour flight or something like that.
Yeah.
And I moved out here, and I saw it here probably 6 years ago. I'm like, I'm moving here. It's going to be a couple of years. And it took me a year and a half, 2 years to move out here. What has been a big challenge for you? Because a lot of people have challenges to overcome.
Yeah.
And how have you overcome it, or how have you put the team in your life to be able to support you through those?
So I think one of the biggest challenges for me personally is as a person in a wheelchair, I require a lot of help with my day-to-day activities. So I've had to figure all of that out, which was difficult in the beginning because I went from my mom being my caretaker to now I have private duty nurses and assistants to help me. So learning how that would work for me was the biggest challenge. Once I figured out that, then everything else kind of just fell into place, and also was really figuring out what type of employment I could do that would fit that, because like I said, I used to work for HR and it was a Monday to Friday 8 to 5 job. I learned so much there, but to make sure I had a nurse there in the morning to get me up, to get me dressed so I could make it on time, that what I'm saying, that was a little bit of a challenge. So those were challenges that I've had some difficulty with in the beginning, but it's interesting because I run even that aspect of my life like a business. I have to hire and fire and train nurses, and so I have that experience. I took that HR experience into my personal life to manage the nurses because I have full-time staff, and then now I have kind of brought that into the business as well, and so far so good.
I love that.
Yeah.
From what age were you in a wheelchair?
3 years. Well, I was diagnosed with SMA at 3, and I stopped walking when I was 6.
And what is SMA?
Spinal muscular atrophy. It's a type of muscular dystrophy.
So one of my good friends I want to introduce you to, Jose Flores. He speaks at my school. He's an amazing human. You and him should definitely speak together.
Sounds good.
Because he's got muscular dystrophy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he's amazing. He's actually doing like stem cell injections now and some really cool things.
Yeah, there's some amazing advances going on right now.
So pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So where can people find you? Where can they learn more about what you do? Do you do courses? How do people utilize your services to create results for them? So
we do courses and training, which is actually the thing I'm the most passionate about lately, is training. I just did a workshop this morning. We have online classes that are coming out. The best place to connect with us is our website, which is grantsinc.com. I have all the information on there, these different schedules of our classes and whatnot.
Grantink.com?
INK.com. Mm-hmm.
It's great because it's super simple on how to understand what you guys do and then how to utilize you. Mm-hmm. What's your next step? Are you guys, who are you, maybe, like, let me ask you this. Yeah. What is one thing that you don't have today that if you had it, you'd be able to make more impact?
Oh, one thing that I have today, that's a good question. I think it would be a more comprehensive training program, honestly. So I'm working on it, and it's kind of been like my big thing for now for years, is working on a comprehensive training program that really breaks down grants, makes it simple, streamlines it, and it really just gives the information to nonprofits that they actually need to get this going in their organization. And I would love to have that program, be able to offer it to nonprofits so they can just hit the ground running and start bringing grants in for their programs.
I love it.
Yes, it's a goal.
You guys check out grantsinc.com. grantsinc.com. See what she's up to and go find her. She's at Center for Social Change in Miami, Florida. She loves South Florida, so she's not going anywhere else anytime soon.
I'll take a flight, though.
I know. I love flying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do too.
And if you guys want, if you're a nonprofit, you know somebody that's looking for a innovation hub where there's a bunch of nonprofits, a bunch of people that are same like mind, that are impacting lives, just come and learn. Just come check out Center for Social Change in Miami. There's a few other centers around the country, and have an amazing week. Do you got some one quote that you want to tell them, to inspire them? So I have a quote that I put on all of my presentations. It's the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose is to give it away. So, I love it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys have an amazing week. See you guys later. Thank you.